Welcome to yet another tutorial. In this video, I'm going to combine my great interest for music and my great interest for code. So I'm going to build this little drum machine or drum pads, and we're going to use Next.js, and I'm going to use a little bit of style components, and we're also going to use TypeScript. You probably won't need Next.js and a server-rendered application in this case, but it's a good practice because I'm going to start from scratch, and you're going to see how to set up TypeScript with style components in Next.js without using any predefined theme or something like that. And I don't know if you can hear, but these pads here, you can click on them and they will play some cool drum sounds. And these sounds are from Logic Pro in a drum machine. I just took them from there. So they should be good to go to use in a project like this. And these sounds are provided in the link below. You have the finished project, and you also have a folder called sounds in that one. So pretty cool. And it's also going to be responsive. So if we do something like this, you can see that they change, and I've been zooming them in here a little bit also. Whoops. I think that's the correct size. So you should be able to play this on your phone, for example, or an iPad or something like this, instead of clicking with a mouse. So that's pretty cool. All right, so let's start with this little project. So I'm going to be in the console first. I'm going to break this one because that's the finished one. And I have another folder here where I'm going to create my project. And if we go to Next.js, the homepage, nextjs.org, we have the docs, and I have some information here on how to get started. For example, they tell you how to use create next app to create your project. So that's what we're going to do. So npx create next app, npx create next app. Then it's going to ask for a name for the project. So we can call it Next.js drums. And then it will start building your project. All right, the project installed, and I'm going to navigate inside Next.js drums. That's our project. And we have some files here. And if we look at the nextjs.org and the docs, the basic features, they have something here that's called TypeScript. So they tell you here how to activate TypeScript. So you create a file, tsconfig.json, and then you run the dev server, and it will give you some instructions. So that's what we're going to do. Touch, I create a new file, tsconfig.json. And then we run the dev server, npm run dev. That's the command you use to start up your dev server in Next.js. And here you can see it gives you some errors, and that's fine. It looks like you're trying to use TypeScript, but do not have the required packages. And they tell you what packages to install. So npm install, they want to say them as a dev dependency, so that's correct. TypeScript and types React and types Node. So we can grab this little row here and paste it in and run it and install those. And then we can start this up, npm run dev, and it will create all the configuration for us. You can see here that it says we detected TypeScript in your project and created a tsconfig.json file for you. So it filled this file with some default settings, and I'm not going to do anything with this file. So I'm going to use the default settings, break this again, because we're going to install style components also, and I'm going to show you how to configure it with Next.js. So npm styled-components. We need the styles also at styles/styled-components. And then we need a Babel plugin or Babel. I don't know if it's Babel or Babel. Babel-plugin-styled-components. So there's three packages. It's the style components themselves, it's the styles for style components, and it's the Babel plugin for style components. Did I do something wrong? Yeah, I didn't type I for install. So that's what I'm going to do also. npm I, of course. Probably misspelled something. Yeah. Yet again, it should say types, not styles, of course. We have the types at types next/style components. All right, let's hope it works now. And it seems to be working. Great. Then we can open up our code editor. So I'm going to bring it up here and we can check package.json. You can see that we have everything installed here. We have the types, we have the Babel plugin, and we have style components. Maybe, yeah, Babel plugin style components. It should be in the dev dependencies. But hey, it will work anyways. So I'm going to let them be as a regular dependency for this tutorial. But you could move these ones over to dev dependencies instead. All right, so we have everything we need. And we also have this tsconfig file. You can see that Next.js has filled it up with some defaults. So we're going to use these defaults. I'm not going to change them. But there are something we have to do to get the style components to work properly with server-side rendering in Next.js. So we're going to create a new file at the root. We're going to call it .babelrc. And inside of this file, we have curly brackets. And inside the curly brackets, we have presets inside of quotes, double quotes. Then we have square brackets, double quote, next/Babel. We have a comma, and then we have double quote, plugin, no plugins with an S. Then we have square brackets, double quotes, Babel dash plugin dash styled dash components. Something like this. And we tell Babel to use this plugin that we installed so it will work properly with Next.js. So that's everything you need to do to set up style components with Next.js. And we also set up TypeScript so we can get started. And you can see here they have some styles here that they use, for example, in this custom app that they have here. They import the global styles. I'm not going to touch these styles here, but I'm going to create styles with style components instead. And we have to do some small changes in this file now because we're going to change this to TypeScript. So first we're going to rename this file to .tsx. Always use .tsx when you have JSX in your component, otherwise it won't work. So we're going to need to type this up a little bit. So I'm going to mark it with types, and I import type curly bracket. We have something that's called app props that they provide for us from next/app. And then we can create the functional component of this one. I like to have arrow functions instead, so I'm going to convert this one, const my app : react.fc. That's how you specify a functional component in React. And this is a generic, so we can send in the app props that we imported. We're going to have an equal sign now because this is an arrow function. And we have the fat arrow there. And this should be it for this component. I just remembered I can bump up the font size a little bit here. So this is everything we're going to do in this app.tsx file. And this file is used if you want to customize some stuff. Maybe you want some state that you want to keep between pages, and then you can use this component for this. But I'm not going to do anything here in this tutorial. So I'm going to leave it as it is. And you can see that it also created this API folder. I'm not going to touch this either. I just let them be here now. We're only going to be in the index file, and we're going to create a component for the drums also in a components folder. So what we can do now is to actually start up our dev environment to see that it works. So we go to our console, type in npm run dev. It seems to be compiling. So we have the application here, you can see. This is the default starter for Next.js, so it's working. We can also have our console open, go back to the code. Then we rename the index.js to index.tsx. Like this. Hopefully I won't have to restart. No, it's still working. Great. I'm going to change some stuff here inside of this file. So for now, we can remove everything inside of the div that's named with container, that has a class name of container. So remove everything there. And we can just type out app, save the file, and see that it works. Yeah, it works. Great. So you can see here they're using React 17, so they don't have to import React, but we want to use state. So we're going to import use state from React. That's the first import we have to do. We don't need the head anymore, so we can remove that. The head is used for when you create the head for your page. For example, the title and the fav icon and stuff like that. You could, of course, leave it in if you want to have it here. But I'm going to remove it so I don't have a lot of code that I'm not going to create in this tutorial to confuse you. So that's why I removed it. I'm also going to import styled from style components. And that's actually it for now. We can remove this import styles from home module CSS. We don't need those styles. That's also why we don't need this class name. So it should look something like this. And we can create our drum types first. And if you look in the folder that you downloaded from the link below this video, you can see that you have a folder called sounds. So copy that folder, go inside of your project, Next.js-drums, and we have a folder that's called public. And inside this folder, you can place all your static files. So paste that one in there, and we can use those sounds for our application. All right, move back to the code, and I'm going to create an array with all these sounds because we're going to map through this array and create all these drum pads from these sounds. So const drum types equal an array, and each element is going to be an object. We have a type, it's a string, kick, comma. We have the sound itself, it's also string, /sounds /kick.mp3. So that's how the structure of these drum objects is going to look like, that we're going to map through and create all these components for them. And we can also type this one if we want to do that. So this drum types array is going to return an array of these objects. We type this object, type drum object equal, and we have an object. And we have the type, it's going to be a string. Then we have the sound, it's also going to be a string. And as both of these are strings, we could do it like this also. We have square brackets, we have the key for the object, it's a string. And then we have a string like this. So we specify the type for this one, colon. It's going to be a drum object array like this. And then we can copy this one, and we're going to create 5 other drums, comma, whoops, comma. That's 4 of them. Be very careful to actually add in the comma here. So that's 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We need one more. And then we can change some stuff here. We have the other drum here. It's going to be the snare. And this one is called snare.mp3. We have the hi-hat. And it's called hi-hat mp3. We have the tom.mp3. We have the cymbal, and it's going to be cymbal mp3. And of course we need to have a cowbell. Something like this. This one is camel cased, and this one is all lowercase letters. This is our object that we can use to loop through. We map through them, and we create our drum components. So we have our home component. They like to export it, and it's a regular function. I like to have it as an arrow function. You can do whatever you want. Const home is going to equal a react.fc, a React functional component, equal. It's not going to have any props. So we have the fat arrow, and as I remove the export, I need to export default home. And we can create some code inside of these curly brackets here for the component. We have a const drums. We're going to use state, and we have our drum types inside of that one. We don't need a setter for this one because we're not going to change the drums. And of course, you can also map through these ones if you want to do that. You don't have to put it in state, but I like to have it in state here if we want to do something with it in the future. But otherwise, you could just take this object and map through them in your component and don't use the state. And this state here, you can see that it interprets the type automatically as we provide this as a default value. So that's our state with the drums. And then we can actually create the styles for this one. Usually I have a separate file with the styles, and I import the styles to the component where I use them. I like that structure, but in this case, it's not that much styles actually. So I'm going to style it directly inside of the component. And many people do it like this, so it's nothing wrong. It's just a personal preference that I want to have it in a separate file. But in this case, I'm going to do it inside here. So we have const. I'm going to create a wrapper equal. I use the styled that we imported up here. And then I'm going to style a div. So style.div, then I have double backticks, and we can create our regular CSS inside of these backticks. I'm going to set the min height to 100 viewport height. The padding is going to be 0 and 0.5 rem. I display it as a flex. I set the flex direction to column. I set justify content to center, and I align the items to center. So this little wrapper is only there so that we can center our stuff inside of this component. So that's the wrapper for the complete application. And then we have a wrapper for our drum pads. Const pads wrapper equals styled. Yeah, this can be a styled main, for example, if we don't want to use the div. I'm going to set the padding on the drum pads, 5 rem and 0. Give it some padding at the top and the bottom. I set the flex to 1, and I'm going to display these drum pads as a grid. And the grid template columns is going to be 1 fragment, 1 fragment, and 1 fragment. I want to have 3 columns so that the drums line up that way. And I set the grid dash gap to 20 pixels. And then we want to make this responsive, so we're going to have a media query at media. Max width is going to be 700 pixels. And when the width is less than 700 pixels, we're going to set the grid dash template columns to 1 fragment and 1 fragment. So this is all the styles that we need for this one. We can move back down to our JSX. And instead of this one here, I'm going to wrap it in parentheses. We have our wrapper, and we have our pads wrapper like this. And then we can map through our drums, and we have them in the state up here that we created. So drums dot map, and we have a drum. We have an inline arrow function. We can make an implicit return, so we have parentheses. And then we're going to have our drum component. But for now, we can have a p tag, for example, and we type out drum.type, for example. We can save the file, go back to our application, and you can see that we have our drums here. And we also, of course, need a key. I forgot that one. The key is going to be, we can use the type for the key. And then it won't complain if we reload it. You can see we don't have any console logs, and that's sweet. And what we can do now is to actually create our drum pad component. So inside the pages folder, we can create a new folder that's called components. And we're going to create the new component inside of that folder that's called drum.tsx. And we can do some stuff inside of that file. So first I'm going to import styled from styled components. And we're going to create this style in a second. First, we have our component. Const drum is going to be a react.fc, a React functional component. And this one is going to have some props. So we can create these prop types here. Type props. You can name them to whatever you want. You don't have to name them props. We're going to have a drum type. It's going to be a string. And we're going to have an onClick handler. And the onClick handler is going to be a function that don't takes in any parameters, and it's going to return void. So in our case, I'm going to send in this onClick handler to this function. You could have it inside of this function itself to play the drum sound, but that will make this component to be able to only play that drum sound. So in this case, I can send in whatever on-click handler I want. So instead of playing your drum sound, you can do something else. So that's why I want to send this in as a prop. So this component will be a little bit more dynamic. And you could also then type this one a little bit better if you have another function or something. But this is quite generic now. And you could use any function that don't take in any parameters and won't return anything. All right. So the React.fc, it's a generic. So we give it the props and equal. We have the props here. We just structure them out, drum type and the on-click handler. And we have an arrow function. We can make an implicit return for this one. We're going to create some styles next. So I'm going to create a style component up here. Const styled drum equal. It's a style.div, double backticks, and then we have some CSS inside of here. I'm going to set the width to 200 pixels, and the height is also going to be 200 pixels. I set the border dash radius to 50%. I want these ones to be round, a circle. I set the background dash color to dark slate gray. Then I'm going to have some drop shadow. So I set the filter drop dash shadow parenthesis. It's going to be 2 pixels, 2 pixels, 2 pixels, and it's going to be black like this. Then I set the cursor to a pointer. I want to have that hand cursor when I hover over the drum pads. I set the border to 5 pixels, solid and black. I set the transition. I'm going to be lazy and set it on all to 0.1 second. I want it to change size when I click the drum pad. So that's why I have a transition. So it will transition nice to the new size. The color is going to be white for the text inside of the pad. I display it as a flex. I align dash items to center the text inside of these drums. And also I'm going to justify the content to center, and this will center the text for us. I don't want the user to be able to select the text, so user dash select is going to be none, and the text dash transform is going to be capitalized. All right. Then I'm going to set the active class active, and this one is going to be when we click on these drum pads. So then I set the background dash color to dark gray like this. And I'm going to transform it a little bit. Transform I scale it, parenthesis, to 0.9, and that will make it a little bit smaller. Of course, I have to have a semicolon there and also a semicolon there. And then I want a small little media query also to make it responsive. So media, parenthesis, max dash width is going to be 700 pixels, just as we had before. And then I'm going to set the width to 100 pixels and height to 100 pixels. Something like this. So that's our styles, and we can use them here now in our component. And we make an implicit return, so we can use our styled drum. It's going to have the on-click handler that we send into this one on click. And then inside of here, we have a p tag, and we're going to display the drum type. And that should be it for this component. We have to export default it also, export default drum. Otherwise, it won't work, but this should be it. Save the component, go back to the index.tsx file, and up here, we can import our component, import drum from ./components/drum. And then we're going to change some stuff down here. We don't want this nasty little p tag. We want our drum component instead. So we change this one to the drum component. we have some props. The key first is going to be drum.type. And then we have the drum type. That's the prop to the component. And that's also going to be the drum.type. And then we have the onClick handler. It's going to equal, for now, we can just create an arrow function and it will return null for now. You can close this one also. Do some auto formatting. Save the file and we go back to our application to see what we got so far. Reload it just to be sure. And you can see that it works here now when we click on these ones, but we don't play any sound, and that's because we haven't created our onClick handler. Just going to check so it works for the responsive styles, and it does. So it's great. I love it. We have one more thing to do, and that is to create our onClick handler. So inside the home component, just below the drum stayed, we create the const handle play drum equal. This one is going to take in the sound as a string, and it's going to return nothing. So we specify the return type to void. We have a fat arrow and curly brackets. We create a const that we call audio. We create a new audio. This is built into JavaScript. And we give it a sound. So we create that sound, and then we have to play it. So audio.play, like this. That's everything we have to do inside of this component. Then we move back down to this onClick handler. So instead of null here, don't know why we have parentheses here. Whoops, don't need that. So we have an inline arrow function on the onClick handler, and then we call the handle play drum. And the reason that I have an inline arrow function here is that I want to send in the sound here from the drum.sound to this function. So that's the string with the sound that we want to play. And if I don't have this arrow function here, it will run instantly and that won't work. So that's why I have an inline arrow function. Do some auto formatting and it will put them on their own row. Nice. And I think we're good to go now. This should be it for this little application. Save the file. Go back to the browser, and yeah, it plays nicely. I don't know if you can hear it. I'm going to turn up the volume. It's too bad that the cowbell isn't an analog cowbell. This is some digital sound. So you can, of course, have any sound that you want. You can have an analog drum kit or something, or something else, whatever you want. And I think this is pretty cool because, as you can see, this is not much code to create something like this, and it will work on your handheld devices also. It's maybe a little bit easier to play it like that instead of with the mouse here if you want to do some nice grooves here. All right. Hopefully you enjoy this one, and please subscribe to my channel and spread the word about my channel to the world. I want this channel to grow big this year, and I will put up more videos for you guys. As I always say, see you in another one.